joined now by the voice of the Detroit Lions, one of our favorite weekly guests that we have, the great Dan Miller. How you doing, Dan?
What do you say, guys? How you doing?
Doing great. Doing great, Dan. Talk to me about this one. They head to Tampa for the first time in the history of the matchup. It's going to be a first-place Lions team and a first-place Bucs team. One of the things that Dan Campbell was saying today was that this team, while young, has been so mature to handle their business. How do you think that came to be, where these young guys are just, so mature to compartmentalize everything and do whatever's in front of them?
I think it started last year. I really do. I think it was, rebounded from that 1-6 start and figuring out what it was to win towards the end of the year and going 8-2 at the end of last season, coming back this year, winning at Arrowhead, bouncing back from a loss to Seattle, 2-0 Atlanta team, finding a way to beat them, and then just, really going from there, and then to win at Lambeau as well. It starts to build confidence in young guys. You got a lot of really young guys that still don't know what it is probably to totally win in this league and to play in this league, and they're figuring out. But when you put a win at Lambeau and another win at Lambeau and a win at Arrowhead in their back pocket, they start to believe in what they're doing, believe in the guy next to them, believe in what the coaches are selling them. And I think that's the maturity that they're referring to. And I would also add this. A couple guys remarked about the win over Carolina and that being a sign of maturity. And I do think there's something to that. Look, they were the better team. They're just in a different place than Carolina is right now. And they went out and played that way. There wasn't any messing around. There wasn't any making Carolina think this was going to be their day. And while it doesn't happen all the time, ultimately that's what good teams do, and that's what they did in this one.
We talk about Dan Campbell changing the culture, and the whole organization obviously changing the culture inside the building. Dan, what about the fact that Dan Campbell's totally changed the culture outside of the building too? I mean, with the fan base, you expect them to go in there and beat Carolina like that. We all expect them to go to Tampa Bay and win the football game. You expect them to convert on 3rd and 12. You expect them to stop their opponent on 3rd and 2. We expect these things now. That too is a culture shift.
Like it is. I think these fans have always had hope, even if sometimes it wasn't there in reality. But I think they were also just waiting for something real that they could believe in that wasn't going to, kick them when they turned the other way. And I think finally, through trial and error and building a team and building a depth chart and putting these things together, I think that fans look at this and they believe that this is real and they can put their faith in this. And the fact that you believe that you can go in and win these games is because you've been doing that. The fact that you believe that you can stop teams is because you've been doing that, and that you can convert third downs, as you said, is because you've been doing that. So, look, I think the love for this team, even if it was love-hate sometimes, love-anger sometimes, love-hurt sometimes, I think it was always there. But I think now there is a reality-based thing there that folks look at this team and actually can believe that it's not built on a house of cards. You don't have to say, well, if this happens, and if this happens, and if this happens, they can win a game. It's no. If they go in and play the way they're capable of playing, they can win a game, and that's a different feeling.
Talking to Dan Miller, voice of the Lions on the radio, and of course Fox 2 sports director. You talk about that depth, Dan. This year alone, 5 games, the Lions have missed due to injury: Emmanuel Mosley, Josh Paschal, Taylor Decker, Kirby Joseph, David Montgomery, Hal Vaitai, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Brian Branch, Jahmyr Gibbs, James Houston, and Jameson Williams due to suspension. If that's not organizational depth, I'm not sure what is.
Yeah, I think it is. And I think it's, again, go back to the fact that this team, let's start with the fact that they're built around their offensive line and their depth there, so they can continue to do the things they want to do when those guys, when you have Penei Sewell in there and you have Ragnow in there and you have Jonah Jackson in there, and if Taylor Decker misses a game or whatever, they can move things around a little bit. It's not optimal, but that's where I think they gain their confidence from. That's the heartbeat of the team. And if they can run the ball, they feel good about it. And then Goff, I think, has bought into and believes in this ensemble that they have on offense where, yeah, Amon-Ra is your guy, but if Amon-Ra isn't available, Laporta can roll, Josh Reynolds is having a great season. There's other guys that can catch the ball on this team, as you witnessed last week when they had, list this long of guys that caught passes. So I just think there's doing it. That comes through being challenged and answering the challenge when you have injuries, and I think that's what they've been able to do. And then defensively, look, this team's been beat up at corner, it seems, every time we turn around in every season, but now they've got guys that they can plug in and feel good about. But it's also the fact that front with a lot of young guys is starting to figure it out and getting pressure on quarterbacks and forcing quarterbacks to be uncomfortable and make plays, and that just makes everybody behind them better. So it's a long way of saying it's about drafting players, it's about developing players, and it's about those guys going out there and doing their job. And once they do that, and you see them do that, you believe they can do that, then you're trusting the guy next to you. And that's ultimately what you have to have when you go out there on a Sunday.
No doubt, and I didn't even mention C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who also should be on that list as well. Dan, at what point do all those injuries catch up to you, though?
Well, you don't want to sustain too many more. And, I mean, the nice thing is, for the most part, outside of C.J., they never really had Mosley, and that's unfortunate. But, in some ways, you can't lose what you never had. It's heart breaks for him just to come back, play 2 plays, and tear your other knee is just unthinkable. But look, I think not many teams have a Tracy Walker behind a C.J. Gardner-Johnson, a former team captain and a veteran, and they had that. But the deeper you go, the more difficult it gets. And I think also, let's be fair, there's certain guys this team can't afford to lose. You wouldn't want to lose Aiden Hutchinson. You wouldn't want to lose Jared Goff. You don't want to go too much deeper on that offensive line in terms of injuries and losing guys. Losing a Ragnow in the middle or Panay for any extended period of time would be, very difficult for this team. And that's no different than others around the league. There's certain guys that are just more difficult to overcome. So, look, when does it become a problem? Well, it's hard to say because as maybe more guys get hurt, you're getting some other guys back. But there does come a point where any team is stressed because of injuries.
Dan, you and Ryan, if you guys want to keep this back and forth conversation going, you guys can just do that at Fox 2.
A lot of questions.
You can just do it at Fox 2.
A lot of questions.
You can do it at Fox 2, okay?
Questions.
Okay. Now I'm just messing. What's going on, Dan? Hey, through just over the the quarter mark of this NFL season, Lions sitting at 4-1. I think they're right there with the Eagles. Got to still put the Eagles above them because they did go to the Super Bowl. They are 4-0, but just barely. But looking ahead of the Eagles, we believe the 49ers are that team right now. I think we can be in agreement that 49ers are a team in the NFC. But how far are the Detroit Lions behind the San Francisco 49ers right now? When you look at the Lions, you look at the 49ers, where do you put them? How did you rank them against each other?
Well, I think some of that depends on what the health of those teams is going forward. I think what Ryan said plays a role into it. We don't know how these teams will ultimately look here in a month or 2 months or 3 months. I think San Francisco's defense is just what makes them a little bit different right now compared to some other teams. They are so good, so violent, and such a well-oiled machine. And then offensively, I'll tell you what, I watched that last game, and I thought in the back of my mind, okay, maybe Purdy's a system guy. Maybe this is the weak link. That dude was fitting some passes in there that were really, really impressive. He's playing with a ton of confidence right now to the point where, man, you better forget where he was drafted and just look at what he's doing. And that was kind of my takeaway from that game. So I just think right now they're so complete. McCaffrey is just, tremendous and so elusive, so can do so many different things on the field. I do think right now you have to look at them. But I will say this. The one thing about the Lions defense that's intriguing to me, and I was looking at this today, is look at how many guys on this defense, which is really, in truth, just beginning to figure this thing out. Yeah. They're just, second half of last year, early this year, turning up that run defense. They're just now turning up that pass defense, turning up the pass rush. Look how many guys, on that defense are in their third year or younger.
Yeah.
And they're just now starting to figure things out. Their run defense, which has been so good to this point, it's the same guys that it was last year. It's just young guys getting better. And I think that's intriguing to me because what's the ceiling for these guys? What's the ceiling for Aleem McNeil or Aiden Hutchinson or these other guys that are contributing right now? and a part of what's going right. I just think there's a lot of upside left for this team potentially, which could make them kind of dangerous as you go forward.
Dan, I agree, and this isn't a question for you. This is more of a statement or kind of like a analogy, if you will, a comparison. They remind me of that, and I even hate to say this out loud because I hate that team. They remind me of the 2014 Ohio State team. They remind me in the sense that Alabama was this juggernaut of a team, and Alabama had never hit somebody in the mouth, and that person hit them in the mouth back. I think that's what the Lions are going to be for the 49ers. The 49ers aren't used to anybody hitting them back. Look at Dallas. Dallas didn't even want to be on the same field as the 49ers. They haven't faced a team, and I think the Lions will be that team to, oh, you hit us, we'll hit you back. And then it'll cause the great 49ers, oh, SHIT, we're in a game now. I think that's what the Lions are going to provide against the 49ers, just to be able to take the punch and throw it back.
Yeah, and I don't think they back down to anybody. I think that's one thing Dan Campbell has instilled in them is they're not afraid of a challenge. They weren't afraid to go into Kansas City. They haven't been afraid to go into Lambeau, whether it was Rodgers last January or a younger, different-looking team with Jordan Love this year. So, again, that comes from confidence. And that comes from believing in what your coaches are selling you, and believing in what your coaches are selling you comes from success. So, yeah, I'd love to see that matchup. I'd probably like to see it maybe a little bit down the road because I think this team's going to continue to get better.
Yeah.
And I'd love to see where they are in December, given some healthier and not being wrecked by injuries. But to your point, while I think I agree with you. You put San Francisco and you put Philadelphia ahead of these teams right now.
Yeah.
I think the Lions would be happy to roll the football out there and see what happens if they ultimately got a chance to play them.
Agreed.
Hey, Dan, we spoke to Janoris Jenkins yesterday. He's waiting around. He's going to get a call from an NFL team here. He's in Arizona. He's staying in shape. Big name guy, former All-Pro. He's in the record books a few times. They signed Anthony Everett yesterday from the Ravens. They put him on the practice squad. You get Chase Lucas moving up. Are we ever going to see a player like that being brought in as a free agent here, or are they just going to stick with trying to pick a diamond in the rough, a young guy that they don't have to really pay?
Oh, you're talking about in season? I mean, obviously, off season they did.
I'm talking now.
Free agency. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think sometimes there's a reason a guy's sitting out there. Sometimes there's a reason a guy isn't on a team. And I know that, it seems like the one thing that people do is fall in love with guys that either get cut by a team or are sitting out there. And sometimes I think there's a reason to look a little deeper as to why. I think the bigger question, Tom, would be, would they be buyers here as you head towards the trade deadline? Mm-hmm. Is there something that makes sense for Brad Holmes to look at, whether it's a receiver, cornerback, secondary help, whatever it is, whatever he thinks could help his team, another offensive lineman for some depth, whatever it is, would they be buyers? And I think the answer to that could be yes. I think if a team is looking to get rid of somebody and they feel like it makes sense for them, that wouldn't surprise me if they did something like that, because I think you've now put yourself in a position where you weren't last year and you weren't certainly the year before, where one move could be the difference between being able to either A, if it's a reserve, handle another injury, or B, lift you from where you are right now to what Braylon was talking about, to moving ahead of or equal to some of these other teams. So I think more so than guys that are sitting on corners right now waiting for a call, I think it's about seeing what other teams might start offloading some guys and find out whether or not that makes sense for you. As far as, look, if you run a guy through and a guy's out there and he doesn't have a team right now and you love the way his workout looks, then I don't think they'd be against something like that. It just has to make sense.
We bring up Janoris because the Niners called on him last year in the playoffs to take over for Emmanuel Mosley. So I'm just thinking, why not? Maybe lightning strikes twice for the guy. That's all.
Yeah, and I did not look at that tape. I have no idea if he looked like the same guy or I kind of doubt he did, just because, age gets the best of everybody at some point. And again,
except Tom Brady. Except Tom Brady.
Well, at some point he did, right?
Right, I'm just playing. Dan, thanks, my man. Now, do you have a favorite steakhouse in Tampa that you go to? Or, I mean, that's a good trip.
Ybor City.
I I got a client dinner on Saturday night with some sponsors, so wherever they tell me to go is where I'm going, but I'll order something nice, I guarantee.
Hey, they're
that.
buying, no doubt
Nice
about
Italian
it.
steakhouse, like I can't remember, like off the beaten path. Ives Dairy or something.
Braylon's got a book of places to go, always.
I'm sure he does. We'll check
You may want to stay away from those places.
Right. We'll keep
still
Dan
Hooters
away.
there.
We'll keep Dan away from those.
There
Thanks,
it
Dan.
is.
We appreciate
Fair.
it,
All
bud.
right,
And again, you
man.
can watch us every day on the Fox Local app, and of course, Fox2Detroit.com. Great partnership here, Woodward Sports and Fox 2. So we thank Dan for that. I gotta let you know.